Alright, so earlier in the month of March, Denise Villeneuve had a tiny little film come out. Some, maybe if you haven't even heard of it. It's called Dune Part 2. I mean, it's really small. It's really good. You should go check it out, but it's not really making any money at the box office. It really needs some people to go out and see. It's just a small movie, has a small budget. It's really good for that. Obviously, I'm joking. Dune Part 2 has a big budget. It looks amazing. It is an amazing movie. It's making a lot of dough at the box office, so yeah, again, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. But today, I'm going to rank all of Denise Villeneuve's American movies. I say American movies because he has made several Canadian movies. There are a couple reasons why I haven't checked them out. Number one, they're really hard to find and watch. And number two, they just don't sound interesting to me. It's not a movie that I just really want to sit down and watch. They never really sound like something I'd be into. But that means today I'm going to rank the American films. He has 7 of them, I believe, and so we're going to do that today. But before I do that, please make sure to subscribe, like button, hit the bell, and comment down below. What is your ranking of Denise Villeneuve's films? I want to know all that and more. And with that said, coming in last place is Enemy. And let's be perfectly clear, I don't think there's a single bad movie on this list. I think he made pretty great movies. I can really say that. But Enemy, for me, has to be last place for one sole reason. It really would have waned my enjoyment if, during the middle of the movie, I didn't fall asleep and then wake up the next day, Google or read an article about Enemy, kind of get it explained, and then watch the rest of the movie. If I had no idea that it was supposed to be an analogy for split personalities, and when one of them dies, it's killing that personality, then the spider means that the wife is trapped and defenseless, and if I didn't know all that because of an article I read, I would have been so confused. Like, okay, that was a weird movie. And the ideas that the movie was representing were pretty interesting. But the movie never really wants to explain that. Jake Gyllenhaal's in this movie. I love Jake Gyllenhaal. I think he is one of the best actors working today. I think he was great in this movie. The rest of the cast does pretty good as well. It's just an interesting movie. There are sequences that really work for me where I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I like the idea about split personalities and the spider in the defensive position and learning all that. I liked all that. It's just, if I didn't read the article, I wouldn't have understood it. So I got lucky by reading something before. Because this is just a movie where it's like, interpret it how you want. And I'm not very smart, so I can't do that. I think it's a good movie. It's only 90 minutes, so I would probably rewatch this again. But for Denise Villeneuve's, I think for sure it's his weakest film. 6th place, I got Blade Runner 2049. This is a hot take. It really is a huge hot take. A lot of you adore this movie. I watched it for the first time, never seen the first Blade Runner. I watched it for the first time, I think a week ago today, actually, and I thought it was good. I thought the movie was just good. It's actually on par with what's next in my list as for what I think is a good movie, but it also has its flaws. Starting off with its positives, just like Jake Gyllenhaal, Ryan Gosling is a phenomenal actor. I think he is also another one of the best working today, and he is really great inside this movie as well. Harrison Ford's in the movie. Everybody inside this movie is really, really great. The movie looks beautiful. The action sequences are pretty good when there is some. And overall, I just kind of like the plot of the movie and the way it was paced. It was different. It goes from the movie's about trying to find this child to him figuring out he was a child to him figuring out he's not the child. And it comes interesting in that sort of sense. And I was never bored by the movie. I just always thought, yeah, that's an interesting idea. That's very fascinating. The pacing is just an interesting way what you're doing here. I think the problem with the movie is that it feels like it's a part 1 of 2. The movie kind of sets up this plot where they're starting a revolution against the people that made the robots, and there's going to be a war, and then the movie wraps up with him saving Harrison Ford out of a plane, and then stopping one of the bad guys, but Jared Leto's still out there, the war is still coming, and none of that's resolved. Maybe I missed something, maybe I'm just stupid, but it feels to me like there should be a part 2 here. And what we know about Dune is Dune Part 2 makes Dune Part 1 better. So we know Denise Villeneuve can do a Dune or a Blade Runner 2049 Part 2. But it just feels like there's so many ideas here that weren't well established out. And plus, like I said, I was never super bored during the movie. I always thought it was interesting, but I kind of was hoping this was more of an action movie. There wasn't that many action sequences, so there were times that it did kind of stretch on. Like, it was interesting, but it did kind of stretch on. Like, I wish there was an action sequence sprinkled in here and there. Don't get me wrong, it's a good movie. It's fine. But it's definitely, I think, one of Denis Villeneuve's weaker films. On that same lines, we got Dune Part 1 in our next spot. I really do like Dune Part 2, and I think Dune Part 2 makes this one much better. This is why it's above Blade Runner 2049. I think the first hour of this movie is one of the best hours of Denis Villeneuve's entire career. The world building is absolutely perfect. The cast of characters are just really fun to watch. The cinematography is great. That first hour is really great. It's really good. But then we fade away from that, and we start getting into more of the action sequences, stuff I would like. And I feel like the action and the pacing kind of feel a bit off to me. It's all of a sudden, oh, we're getting attacked in the middle of the night, and there's a huge attack, and then like every other action scene, it's like, oh yeah, they're here, let me go fight them real quick. That's kind of what it felt like. And the movie just kind of is paced really weird to where there's real big stretches of nothing happening, and then there's and then if something happens and it goes real quick. It gets kind of paced weird after that first, I'd say, 90 minutes of the movie. Don't get me wrong, I was never bored. I never thought that it was unenjoyable. I always thought it was still pretty good, but it also started to become a bit overrated in that sense. Again, great first hour. It was still a really good movie, I thought, but there was definitely some problems there. And I think the main thing that makes me appreciate this movie more is that it set up Dune Part 2 to where Dune Part 2 is perfection. Obviously, in case you can't tell, it's going to be up there much higher on my list. But that movie is just really, really great. And it really helps out this movie, making this movie be really, really great as well. So, I still thought it was a good movie when I watched it. I think once Dune Part 2 comes out on 4K, I'm gonna watch both of these movies back to back. I think that would be a great double feature. Number 4, we're going with Arrival. This is the Denis Villeneuve film about aliens coming down and they're learning the alien language. And I thought it was interesting. I thought the majority of the movie was interesting. I was never bored by it. I thought there were a couple of good ideas. I was like, I'm liking getting that explored out a little bit. But it wasn't necessarily a movie for me. It's a movie that I wouldn't necessarily just put on again out of Denis Villeneuve's filmography, because it's just like finding out language. And the movie I just thought was good. It was just another good Denis Villeneuve film. The thing that really fixed this one was that ending. Because man, once that ending hit, man, I was kind of torn apart. I mean, it was beautiful. Describing, like, just knowing what would happen in the future, that you'd have a daughter, and that she'd die. Just that first sequence of the movie, I was like, oh, wow, that's powerful. And don't get me wrong, I've seen this a long time ago, right? It's been a while since I've seen the movie. And the ending never stuck with me when I saw it back in, I'd say, when I started being a film critic, so 2020. And so, it just I didn't understand it. Now I did, because it's just done so perfectly and so emotional by the cast and the score at the end that I was crying at the end of the movie, and I was like, wow, that was a powerful ending, and it really conveys emotions really good. All the cast is great. Amy Adams, Jeremy Renner, I think they're both phenomenal, have great chemistry. Yeah, I just think that this one is a really, really great ending. The majority of the movie, it wasn't necessarily for me, but I felt that it was interesting, and so I was never bored by it. Like, I was just like, oh, that's cool. But it was definitely a movie like, okay, yeah, we're kind of just still talking to them. I feel like it'd work better if it was only 90 minutes, maybe cut off a half hour there, but I mean, that ending, if an ending and a plot twist can really stick with you that much to where it affects the whole movie, to where you'd say, yeah, this movie was actually really good and it all makes sense, you've done your job as a director, and that's great. And our top 3, I just gotta be perfectly clear, all 3 of these movies are A+'s for me. I think all 3 of these movies are absolutely phenomenal. from start to finish. I love them, and it hurts me that I have to have a third and a second before my number one, because I would love to put any of these at number one. Number three, I have to go, and it hurts me so much, is Sicario. This is a comfort movie for me. If you know what the movie is, it might sound like I'm freaking weird, but I actually went to a nice little vacation town in my state. So we were staying in a place with a home theater. So I got to watch this movie in a home theater, and that's pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie, it was really cool. And I actually watched it again the next day. Not only because I fell asleep halfway through, but because I thought it was really compelling and really good. And then I watched it a couple more times when I got home. I've seen this movie 4 times now. 4 times. And each time I think that this movie is really, really, really interesting and good. The thing about this movie is it doesn't just get you interested with the big explosive action sequences of a war film. It interests you on what's behind the scenes, what's actually happening. Played expertly as all these characters, Josh Brolin, Emily Blunt, Benicio del Toro, all of them are phenomenal in this film. They got great chemistry with one another, but everything they're doing is stuff that you like, oh, that seems a bit suspicious, and putting you in the footsteps of Emily Blunt, a person that wants these bad guys gone, but they are not willing to push the boundary. She does not want to end up doing something illegal like they are doing in order to get them gone. And so everybody else breaking the law and being illegal in that sense is just, it's a really compelling story arc to be like, oh, who do you root for in this situation? Because you want all these bad guys gone, but you don't want the heroes to become the bad guys. It's like what they say in The Dark Knight, live, either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain, because that's kind of what this movie is. And it's just really, really compelling. And it just got some great sequences. Benicio del Toro, his whole character arc is he's trying to avenge his family. Basic character arc. You've seen it a billion times before. But what the movie does with it is it just makes it insanely interesting to where he's a guy who will work for anybody just to get revenge at the people who killed his family. And he's such a compelling character because at the same time you really want to root for him. But then he goes to sit at dinner with the bad guy and he murders the entire family in front of the bad guy. Like, he wants justice. He's not about getting them arrested and doing the right thing. He just wants to kill them. And that's just a really compelling character arc. At the same time, you want him to do the right thing. You're rooting for him. But at the same time, you don't want him to do the thing he's going to do. And so that was just really, really compelling. And then he goes to Emily Blunt's house with a gun and says, I'm gonna need you to sign this. And it was crazy. And just every sequence that just has people talking is just insanely interesting behind the scenes here. And then again, the action sequences, they're really good. The movie shot phenomenally. Phenomenally. It looks great. So there's just so much in this movie that I think was really, really great and makes it, and not only that, but it's insanely rewatchable for me. Like, it's a comfort movie for me. I really did enjoy this movie, and it hurts me that I have to put it at number 3. Number 2 is Prisoners. This was a first time watch, and let me tell you, I was never more scared of an opening sequence ever before in my life than I was here. I was absolutely terrified to start this movie because it's I wouldn't call it a horror movie, but it's a movie where something happens where a child gets kidnapped, which is very real. It's not like, oh, spooky clown kills them or there's an axe murderer kills them. Someone gets kidnapped, which is something that can happen. And so instantly from the beginning, you like Hugh Jackman's character. You like all these characters, so you don't want anything bad to happen to the family. And when it does, it's just, oh, and I was shaking. I was like, oh, this is terrifying. And so, after that, the movie just, it's also just really compelling. The characters are something that, in these next 2 movies, and in Sicario, again, Denise Villeneuve is really great at crafting phenomenal characters. So you're rooting for Hugh Jackman. He goes after Paul Dano's character, keeps him locked in a box, starts torturing him. and you want him to find his daughter. You want him to keep torturing this guy because you don't know if he has a daughter. At the same time, you don't want Paul Dano to keep getting tortured because you don't know what his deal is. You don't think he actually kidnapped the daughter. And so all these characters just have these really unique character arcs to where you don't know whose side you're on. All you want is to find this kid. And that just creates a dilemma where you want this guy to win. You want this guy to win. And just as everything comes crashing down in the finale here, it's all just really interesting to see. Oh, Paul Dano was this, and everything makes sense as it crushes into this finale. I do think the finale might be a little bit blockbuster, like not as real life-ish, if that makes any sense, as there's just one woman and she's been kidnapping kids for years and keeping them locked in her house, and she has a hole in the basement. Like, that's not as realistic as the rest of the movie was, but still really engaging. But the thing is, it crafts perfect characters that you want to see win, but they're doing terrible things. And that's something that Denis Villeneuve does really well, is craft perfect characters that they're doing terrible things, but you want to see them win. And that is something that is just so special about this movie, is the characters and how terrifying and realistic the movie was. This is a movie that, unlike anything I have ever seen before. I don't think I've ever seen a movie as shockingly real and as unique as this. This movie was just really good in that sense, and I just... it's been hard to get out of my head because of how real it was and how great it was. But you know what movie that's been hard to get out of my head? Dune Part 2, which is our number one. This might be biased. This might be biased because the first Denis Villeneuve movie I've seen in the theater, I thought it looked great in the theater. This might be biased of me. But man, oh man, is Dune Part 2 freaking awesome. It is an amazing movie. I loved it. Again, back to the characters. Denis Villeneuve crafts all these characters where each of them has a subplot. Even the ones that don't have a full fleshed out subplot. Like, the one that goes back to mind is Dave Bautista's character. Yeah, I get it. Oh, he's yelling. All he does is yell. Oh, he's annoying because all he does is rah! But if you think about it, he gets one scene, or he gets two scenes. One scene where he's told he's a failure, and another scene where it's shown why he was a failure. It's not like them saying, oh, you failed us again, and showing multiple reasons why he's a failure. The thing that comes here is the hand-to-hand combat between him and Josh Brolin. You might think, oh yeah, that was just rushed. The Josh Brolin fight was just rushed. That was half-baked. The way I see it was, he can't fight. He's a failure to his family, so he gets in there, he acts so tough, and then he dies. Like, that's a unique character arc, and every single character in this movie has layers. They have layers, and that is what makes this movie so compelling, is the characters. Top of that, cinematography, great. The action sequence is much better than the first movie. One that goes back to my mind is definitely the hand-to-hand combat between Paul and Fade Rotha. I think that one was phenomenal. Speaking of Fade Rotha, Austin Butler, phenomenal villain in here. One of the best villains, probably the best villain of the century or decade, whatever. But, I mean, the characters are great. It looks great. The action's great. The casting is phenomenal. I mean, this is just a movie all around. It's a special theatrical experience that I think you guys gotta go see, because I love the movie. And not only that, but it makes Dune Part 1 a much more compelling movie. Knowing that we get the payoff, and the payoff is done properly, makes it such a compelling movie. And I just adored this movie. I thought it was great, and that's why it's got to be my number one. What is your Denis Villeneuve ranking? Tell me down below in the comment section. While you're down there, go ahead and subscribe, like button, hit the bell so you never miss another director ranking. I got several more director rankings. There's going to be a playlist on my YouTube channel. I did Jordan Peele. On my second channel, I've done James Gunn. Earlier this year, I did Matthew Vaughn. So yeah, go ahead and go check those out. Thanks for watching this video, and with that said, subscribe, join the Nerd Army. Peace out.